Right, we'll call our regular meeting council to order at 6 o'clock and get started with our land acknowledgement statement. The town of Coalhurst is located in traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Indigenous peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our community. Moving into the adoption of the agenda, can I get a motion for that, please?
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. And then can I get a motion to adopt the previous minutes from our last meeting?
Sure. I move to adopt the previous minutes of the September 5th regular meeting of council.
Excellent. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. All right, so we're moving right into staff reports here. So the first one that we do have is the CAO report. And I was taking a look at this earlier and it looks like you've been pretty busy.
Oh, yeah.
There's lots happening. So maybe what I'll do is we'll go to council to see if there's any questions. And then if there's anything else that we've missed that you'd like to highlight, we'll leave that up to you. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Just curious, did we have any luck with our CMP presentation recording? And if so, are we able to share that with the community?
So I might lean on Carlene for that. I think the quick answer is no. But the recording of the crime prevention session.
Yes, we're just working on updating our website at the moment, so we'll be putting out social posts as soon as possible.
But did we?
The
recording didn't work, did it?
We have the recording for the options.
For the last section that involved the crime reduction specialists.
Yeah.
Yes, that's unfortunate that we had that technical glitch, but I think we've already posted up the presentations and the PowerPoints, so that information's already on site.
And then just my last question is, when we're talking about the appeal, that hasn't been withdrawn yet, has it?
No. Okay. To my knowledge.
And that's it for my questions.
Great. Is there any further questions?
I guess anything related to the wetlands will be discussed later. Is that when you were talking under operations, you were reviewing contracts with Kevin?
Yes.
And the deficiencies?
I'm not sure that we've reached a conclusion just yet on that.
Thank you for the question, Mayor and Council. Yeah, we're still in discussions. I've spoken with the engineers on it. There is definitely some breaches there that miss some deadlines on a number of occasions. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes.
We might, Kevin, if I might.
Yeah.
You may want to carry that conversation on in closed session.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There is some discussions there.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any questions? All right. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to highlight for us? Like I said, I think you've got a lot of work going on. So
yeah, we're very busy. We've made a selection for the rec master plan. I'll be working with the company to draw up a contract for service. So until that's agreed upon, it's still up in the air, and I'll notify the other applicants once we have a signed contract for services. I am most of the way through reviewing all the applications for community service director, so hopefully we can get that moving forward quickly. Carlene's going to assist once I've shortlisted, and got some very good applications, so it's very positive.
that's great.
38 I think was the final number.
Wow.
That's excellent. Great. If there's no further questions or discussion, can we get a motion to accept the report or to receive the report? Thank you.
I move that we receive the report of information.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. So now we'll move on to the Director of Operations report. We will do the same process here. So if council has any questions on this, we can start there. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just with regards to the wetlands project there, I know that there was talk about the bridges being installed on the 15th, and it looks like there is now. But with regards to the pathway and the finalization of the landscaping and lighting, is that going to be completed this year, or is that going to push into next year? I understand that some of the grass seed and stuff will be pushed till next spring, but I'm just kind of curious about the rest of it.
Thank you for the question. It will be finished, probably in the next 2 weeks. There was an issue, I think I did mention in here with the lights. I did have some complaints from, well, one complaint from a resident that lives near there. We did look at it, and the light is emitting more than even the contractor expected. The light experts that supplied the lighting were sent pictures, and they were like, no, this is not right. So we have left them off. I believe they're still off. And we are having our light design people from the engineering firm work with their engineers to fix that problem. We don't want it disturbing the neighborhood. It looks, I even drove by the one night that did look quite like an industrial area. So that's being addressed. Yeah, other than that, they're just finishing the pathway where the bridges were taken in, and a little bit of landscaping and stuff to be finished here in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome, happy to hear that. That's it for my questions.
Any additional questions? Director of Operations. I just have a question then regarding that. So if that is completed, I know that like we won't have all the amenities and things like that in there, but I know that like a lot of the residents are quite interested and keen on being in the area. Is it still a closed construction site? Like what is the status of that, I suppose, like once the path is finished?
Once they're finished construction this year, it will be accessible.
Okay.
The pathways will be usable and everything else. And I think administratively, that's when we're going to have a look at, it's easier to see once it's boots on the ground.
Yeah.
What we're going to put and where and how we're going to, benches,
Yes.
dog bag stations, garbages, maybe picnic tables, that kind of thing around. So
Okay.
that'll be worked on once it's completed.
Great, thank you.
Some planning.
Yes. Go ahead.
I do have a question on the shop addition contractor starting construction over the next few weeks. I think that we had seen those quotes sometime in the summer, so it's, from my understanding, it looks like we've taken a little while to get things rolling, I guess. Is there any reason for that, or is that?
I did speak with the contractor. He is aware, he's applied for his permits and everything, and they're just tied up with other jobs. He's communicated to me that this will be a very fast build, probably framing and everything in 1 week, kind of thing. So he's not too concerned about meeting the deadlines.
I see.
Okay. I believe I signed the permit today.
Oh, did the permit finally come through?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I think there was a mix-up. It was sent to Park and then had to be rerouted.
I guess with the employee, looking at a temporary employee, so just sort of a term position, do we have a sort of a bit of a timeline, what that looks like, or?
Hasn't been decided yet. I've been in discussions with Sean on how to handle that. The problem with hiring somebody for a short term is training, and you having to basically show them everything. It ties up a person doing that. The biggest thing would be for snow removal.
Yeah.
Being short, but we do have an employee this year that we didn't have last winter that still needs some training. Still debating whether to hire someone or maybe do a little bit of contracting if we need it to help with snow removal.
I guess that was what my question was, if there was about budget implications.
Yeah.
Beyond sort of what's already been budgeted, would it be wise just to go with contracting? We've done that in the past with snow removal and.
Yeah, I think outside of snow removal, we can probably handle things with the staff that we have. But if we do get a heavy snowfall, we may have to get some help that way. So we're still debating whether or not it's feasible to hire someone.
And if I might add to that, we're not really sure of the length of time that we're dealing with here either, so that's a bit of a wild card for us. So.
We'll know more after his surgery in November.
Yeah. So it's in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Could we organize to just send meals over to him or something, check in on him?
I think he's checking in on us if I remember.
Oh, yeah, he's going stir crazy. He phones me quite often.
Yeah.
All right, is there anything that else you would like to highlight from your report?
No, I don't think so. Just that for residents, we will get out the information about a leaf pickup. We're doing one October 23rd. Probably we'll do a second one, weather permitting, because sometimes all leaves aren't down that date, so we usually do two.
Okay,
But yeah, no, other than that, it's just business as usual.
great, thank you.
Can they pick the bags up from the office, or do they supply their own this time?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's hit social media yet, I have to run it up, but yeah, there'll be bags available here as well, up to 5.
Yeah, if I might, we haven't posted it quite yet, but we have the post prepared. We had about 5 go at the same time, so we thought we'd hold on just a little bit and let them digest those first. And Kevin's crew has been blowing out irrigation system in the last few days, winterizing our parks.
Yeah, we got another day and a half to go doing that, so.
Great, if there's no further questions, can I get a motion to receive the report?
I'll move to receive the Director of Operations report as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. All right, so we're gonna move on to the Director of Corporate Services report. Maybe with this one, what we'll do, so I know you have your variances report here as well. Maybe what I'll get you to do is actually start out and go over any of the major variances that people might have questions on, and then we'll go into your report and see if anyone has any additional questions from that.
Overall, the variances are in line with where we expect to be at this point in the year, given some if we are paying the city for getting the water here, those invoices have come in, yes, we're seeing those look off. One thing that we're noticing, especially this year, is the interest on the funds in the bank. It's significantly up compared to budget. And so that what that ended up doing then would just be flowing through into the year in surplus, which then we can reallocate at the end of the year, which is a surplus policy, something that's definitely on my radar to get in place for how that will be dealt with at the end of the year. But there's the interest rates it's kind of a nice bonus to what's in there to be able to have that going forward, but they can come down again. And I think, the Bank of Canada will be intending to bring those rates down in the future, but how long that takes are we talking 1 year, 5 years? Is it going to keep going up? Hard to say.
So that would be in reference to when we look at revenue from own sources, like that 39?
Yes, on that first one, yes.
That's all from the interest that we didn't really account for?
The majority, yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. And on the council one, nothing stands out really. The ABM Unis convention is coming up where there'll be some of the travel expenses that will be used up in that portion. The administration, there's a couple of ones that are gone a little unspent, being one of the budget items which I address in my report as well is the financial software upgrade, where we budgeted $80,000 for that coming from the administration reserve. I've been spending hours with various companies trying to get demos and seeing what they can provide. And looking like that will come in significantly less, although those funds won't be spent in this year. They will be rolled over and spent in 2024, but at a much less rate. It also includes an amount for the website upgrade, which has been stalled. We have looked into a few, and it's kind of bounced around who's helming that project. And so it's just been a little delayed in it, so as transition has happened in the organization. Again, in the revenue from own sources, there's some interest rates, and there was the interest rates adding some revenue to that, as well as we got a refund from the CRA because we had overpaid some payroll source reductions back in 2021, and they got it and sent it back to us, so got a little refund from the CRA, which is kind of a nice little bonus. And for the fire department, high revenue in that grants and lieu one, and then high expense in the personnel. That's directly related to the fire department members going up and helping with the wildfires this past summer. If we go to protective services, the one that's a little bit higher is just and I just want to draw mention to it, is just the purchases from other governments for the $110,000. That is our contract with the RCMP that we are required to pay now. And it's an expense that is going up each year. In 2024, it should level out around the $150,000 mark, but there'll be a jump in this year to next year for that. And it's just a cost that's been downloaded to municipalities, and everyone's paying it.
Mike, if you would, just go back to fire for just a moment. So you explained that the expenditures were high because of our guys going up north. There will be a revenue offset, however, is that correct?
Yes, the revenue in the top part is offsetting that expense. So the personnel expense is about at 100% spent for this year, where it should be sitting around 50%, but that additional amount is because of that.
So where, which line is that showing up under?
The revenue is under the 200 grants in lieu, and the expense is under the personnel.
Just so council's aware of where
So we have received that.
We have received that.
Okay.
In Public Works 131, there was we have a Bobcat that we kind of swap out each year. And so some of those costs, they get recorded as revenue and then expense in the 500 materials, goods and services. And so we get a Bobcat, we return it back to the provider, and then we end up paying the difference. They credit us on the next one, so it ends up costing us about $8,000 for a new Bobcat each year. And so it just been something in and out on that one, but it gets cleared out with the when the auditors come and move things into the proper spots. What's wrong there? Oh, on this one, one of the requirements under the accounting standards is the asset retirement obligation. There's in the budget for $15,000. We've had a consultant come in and test facilities and take samples. The samples are currently being tested. They send them off to Mississauga, and we should be expecting that in the next couple of weeks, their final report. It was budgeted $15,000. They're anticipating it being far less, under $5,000, somewhere in there, so it will be nice cost savings there. That one was funded through MSI operating, so those funds will be either returned, or we can not return, but reallocated within this year or in future year budgets by carrying it over. In the roads, there's still just the road survey part. I don't know where that's at, but those funds haven't, I don't believe we've paid them, and we haven't recognized the grant and revenue being either.
No, that's the sore spot right now with me.
Under stormwater, there is under the conditional grants line, there's a unbudgeted revenue of $150,000. That is one of the ACP grants for the stormwater infrastructure assessment areas. And we will receive another, once it's completed, they will send another $50,000. And the expenses are found in the contract and general services, offsetting those. So it's kind of in and out. We'll spend all the money and all the money we return, so it ends up being even or not for that grant. And then in the 700 contribution transfer payments, that's just where we are locating the costs for the wetland. So that's what we've spent thus far in the year. Being a capital project, it will be, when we get to our year end, it pulls out and goes into the proper asset accounts. We have somewhere to log it in the interim. Water doesn't really have anything that's outstanding. Sewer, waste collection, all fairly following along. FCSS has just reached its final, the final full amount of this budget, because we make one payment at one point in the year. Under planning 61, you'll notice it looks overspent in the contracted and general services amount, but you'll notice there's nothing spent on the contributions and transfer payments. This is just where in one line where it was budgeted, the actuals are being coded to where they should be spent. So in the 2024 budget, you will see that 25,000 from the contributions and transfer payments move into the contracted general services. That's just our costs for the GIS mapping through Coalhurst, and then also our contract with them for the planning services, but those should be in a different set of GLs. And the subdivision land and development, it's not a concerning one, but it's just there's the revenue on the permits is lower, which can be made in general would be, oh hey, why is the revenue down? But it's actually corresponding to the expenses as well. So if the revenue is down for permits, the expense is down when we send them off to Park for processing them and dealing with those. And so if there's a reduction in revenue, we don't see as many permits happening, there's also a reduction in expenses, so they even out. And then also, just with the filling the position for 6 months of the year, and now that person also leaving, it's left the personnel line really unspent this year. And then in parks, we received a little more revenue from the county based on the formula for the recreation. I think it's a population-based thing, so depending on what the population figures they use, I believe it increased for that reason by a few thousand there. And then under the contracted general services, we haven't had the invoice yet for the neighborhood play program, so that's still outstanding. And then under contribution and transfer payments, there was a spray park holdback for when the resurfacing of the ground there, that was finally paid out. Under community development, nothing of concern there, but you'll notice there's this other revenue transaction. There's $8,000, there's nothing that's been spent there. This was just an internal entries that were done. They aren't necessary to be done, and it was just recognizing revenue and expense for when we used the facilities ourselves, and so we just are not going to keep track of those in the accounting software to maintain what those costs are.
Mike, if I might, what are personnel, what is personnel in that particular department?
It's spread across a few different positions. There would be the coordinator of community development person, as well as a little bit of the front corporate services staff in dealing with bookings in the hall, what they do in taking care of that facility and getting it organized.
So I guess you've been clear, this is really for council's information. So where do you spread the community development director's salaries out?
I have to double check that one. Off the top of my head, I don't know. It's partially in here. I think the majority would be in. A lot of it is in parks as well, Parks and Recreation one, as well as this one. But I have to double check.
Great, thank you for going over that. That was quite helpful. So with that, what we'll do, I'm just gonna go back to my. Maybe what we'll do is we'll ask council if there's any questions that you have either on the report or on the variance report that was presented, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions on the variance report. I know some of the things that I had highlighted we already answered, so I appreciate that. Excuse me. Just with regards to administration, other revenue transactions, our year-to-date is 7,000, budget is for 95,000. I'm just curious what are the other revenue transactions and why is it so much lower than predicted?
I think the other revenue transactions are the transfers from reserves that we would use when for the financial software upgrade and the website upgrade. Because those expenses have not been realized, we don't pull the revenue over either. So you'll see that there's in the contracted general services, there's a budget of 314,000 and a spent of 138. So we're missing a full $95,000 that won't be spent this year, but it's directly from reserve transfers that it would be spent from.
Okay, awesome. Just going through some of these because I have marked, but some of them have already been answered. Okay, I think the only thing that I have for another question, not so much tied to one of these sections, but just there's a lot of them where grants in lieu are not year-to-date actual are not to the budget. Is that just us waiting for grant monies to be paid out for the different, I guess, silos or codes or however you want to call it?
It depends.
An example would be protective services showing 4,000 with a budget of 18,000.
Yeah, so that one is with the bylaw services offered in Barron's. There's just been less, it hasn't been out to Barron's as much, and so we can bill as high. If it's not there, we don't bill.
Okay. And that's everything that I have. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Tina. So just going to the first page, general municipal. Maybe I missed this, but there's a 1.3 million other revenue transaction, 900 there.
Yeah, that one is related to when the debentures were paid out. Those funds had to be transferred into the operating budget. And so that's where where that was recognized then.
I see. Okay. Thank you. And then for the stormwater 37. Oh, sorry, no, we're against that one. Yeah, and then sorry on parks. 72. We just we didn't get a lot of grants. I guess we budgeted for a lot of grants, but we didn't get a lot of grants.
That one is related to the rec master plan, which was funded through the MSI operating. So once it goes through, then we would recognize those revenues once they've been spent. At this point, given the timeline, I don't know if those funds will be spent in this year or if a portion will be spent in this year, depending on how that project goes. But those funds will be, if not spent this year, then we will use them to fund that in 2024.
Okay. And then my last question was about the, I guess I'm trying to figure out, is there a line item on here that describes how much we've spent on community programming events?
It is in parks, and I can't remember the exact number, but it's around 14 or 15,000. But I have to. Here. Yeah, off the top of my head, I couldn't say what it is. I looked in where which one should be, but I had to dig a little more to find exactly what was spent on. I know in this agenda package there was some submissions for the some of the costs that were done for Miners Day and Movie in the Park, so that would be part of it. For things like Canada Day, and I think that's really the only one that's happened.
The relay program, like
The YWCA one hasn't been invoiced yet, but we haven't received an invoice to pay it yet, so.
thank you.
Is there any other questions? No. I just wanted to say that I think that when I was looking at your written report, I think it's awesome about when you talk about the ongoing improvements, about like the EFTs and even just getting more people, getting them more onto that online component. I think that that's a huge time saver, like you indicated for the staff, but also, being, I guess, more sustainable and not having to mail things all the time. So I think that that's excellent.
If I may, that would have been that the being able to upload one file to process the bank transactions has been a game changer for bank reconciliation, as well as just getting people's payments back. When you're entering that many transactions, every single one, keystroke errors happen, and so if people, we're seeing far fewer errors. I can complete the bank reconciliations in much less time. So it's not just one person that's affecting; it's affecting multiple people and saving time for multiple people. So it's been a really hard to believe that I didn't know about it a year ago. If I'd known about it, I wish I would have had it sooner. So
Yeah, that's great. If there's no further questions or anything, can we get a motion to receive the report, please?
Make that motion.
Sure.
We receive the Director of Corporate Services report
Thank you.
for information.
Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Now we're going to move on to our administrative inquiries. The first one we have here is regarding voluntary water reduction. I just gotta go back to here now. I'm going to flip out of here. Sometimes I do weird things. Okay. So with this one, I believe this came from Councillor Florence. And she was asking if there's been a notable difference in the town's water usage since asking residents to voluntarily take action to reduce water consumption, with a response saying that we would have some information verbally today.
Yeah, or at least that I would provide a verbal response on Tina. I have had Kathy trying to calculate the numbers off in relative. The voluntary restriction was applied August 18th, which time we posted it. And while we can calculate the volumes of water used in the municipality since then, we can't rationalize it against anything to determine whether the restriction actually had any impact whatsoever. Obviously, it's dictated a great deal by weather, so comparison with 2022 is really not that relevant because we had different temperature regimes during that time frame. So I don't have the numbers yet, and I will provide them once I have them, but all I can say is we have no foundation from which to make an assertion that the restriction had either a positive nor a negative impact on our water usage. We also had a week in August where it rained, where we had none in July, so comparison to July is almost irrelevant as well. So it is very hard to track that. And I don't know how you would honestly make a comparison to determine the level of reduction that was seen. We also know we're moving into fall in the early part of September, which most people reduce their landscape watering. So even if we see a reduction, I can't necessarily count it towards the voluntary restriction, unfortunately.
Great, thank you.
If I could, I guess, could we perhaps ask, was there ever a point when our water storage was significantly reduced, or was there ever a time when we might have been at risk because of less water coming into our community, where there was bigger output than what was coming in?
Thank you. No, we've never been low in our reservoir or not had fire protective. There hasn't, I mean, there's been days when there's a lot of usage, and that's the difficult part, which what the CEO alluded to is you look at past the 18th, and there's days where water consumption was high and there's days when water consumption was low. The nice thing about having the reservoir here is it is a buffer for fire protection. So it may drop down 3 or 4 feet, but overnight it fills back up. And then other days it might only go down a couple of feet. So it really fluctuates, and water usage fluctuates day to day, depending mostly on weather conditions.
So if I might add, that's the challenge with the numbers, and perhaps as we go forward, we can show you numbers for, you know, the entire 2023 year in terms of how consumption varied from month to month, but I just can't draw a hard line equation to show that the reduction was related to anything specifically.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You could just put your neck out there and just make something up that's simpler.
No, you don't need better than that.
I know when I first read this, I thought, how would you, that would be to take guesswork to extrapolate that one.
It would be, you would be making assumptions and assertions.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to receive this report, or resign this report, I suppose? Yes, this report, for information. Is there any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. All right, so we're gonna now move on to request for decision. The first that we have here is the housing assessment study, and this was put forward by Deputy Mayor Potry, so I'm just going to turn it over to you just to talk about it.
Thank you. I move that the town of Coalhurst allocates $1,500 from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative Operating Fund to conduct a housing need assessment. Part of the reason why I think this is important to our community is that there is a housing shortage across the country with the amount of people that the federal government has let in. We can see it affecting other communities much more, of course, than Coalhurst, especially with some of the recent things that are going on in Calgary. Housing affordability affects all of us in Coalhurst, not just those who can afford it. And it is a goal of our strategic plan to promote diverse and attainable housing within Coalhurst, which is directly tied to this needs assessment. We expect this needs assessment study will give us, it is very reasonably priced to go through ORSC for this, because to hire an outside consultant, it would cost much more money. This is not a full-blown one though that some other consultants would do, but it is enough to qualify us for certain grants like the Housing Accelerator Fund. Although with the estimated time for completion and the deadlines for the grant extending and shifting, it's hard to say if we don't have a project, of course, or anything outlined for any grants right now, but this is the first step in order to get our municipality ready to request funds from different funding agencies who are trying to solve this housing crisis across Canada. So I think as a municipality, it's a good opportunity to position ourselves in a place where we can take advantage of the supports that are provided by the other levels of government, and position us to be able to serve our residents the best that we can.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions for council? Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Potry, for bringing this forward. I appreciate that. When I first glanced at this, I thought the $1,500, that seemed a little low, but you kind of clarified that would be through ORSC. So I guess just my thoughts on this are, do you know what kind of expected timeline we'd be looking at for this? Is this going to be a couple months out? Is this information that we can use to help prepare a budget for next year?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Atkins. I believe our CAO has been in talks, of course, about this. I'll let him answer that.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, the estimated time of completion is 8 to 10 weeks. It really depends on their current workload. They have a couple of these in the queue already, and it just depends when they get completed and how many resources they can allocate. So I would suggest, if I give them the go-ahead tomorrow, we should see that by the end of November.
I thank you for the clarity. When I was first reading this, I thought what you were asking was something that we had already asked, but you're asking specific that we could move forward with or to get this housing assessment done for the budget amount of $1,500. And I'm wondering if, I guess through the mayor to administration, I'm wondering if what we're looking at here, what work we put together, would that be adequate for our needs? Would that be sufficient to be able to not only access grants, but access partnerships?
If I might, through the mayor, as I understand it, yes, and that's why Orsk is doing these, so it's really an update based on demographics as I understand it. Coalhurst had a full-blown housing needs assessment done by the Alberta Rural Development Effort, I believe, in
2017.
2018.
Yeah.
So this likely would piggyback on it a little bit, I believe. And as I understand it from our planner, that this is the document we would require to be able to access funding for housing projects, so.
Wonderful. That is wonderful news then, because I know that we've been looking for someone that can do it, and price is great. The timeline is even better. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, did you have anything you want to say before we vote?
No.
Okay.
That's everything, thank you.
Okay.
Just one quick.
Yeah.
If I may, do we need to specify that that would be through Orsk on the motion?
Not necessarily, I don't think.
Okay.
Okay.
What's your question here?
Is it okay the way that it's written?
I don't think you're gonna get one for $1,500 from anyone else.
Works for me.
All right, I'll just get you to read your motion again.
Thank you. I move that the town of Coalhurst allocate $1,500 from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative Operating Fund to conduct the housing needs assessment.
Excellent. Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. Excellent. Okay, so now we're going to move on to committees of council. I'm just going to go down here. So this was something that I had requested for the summertime. And thank you so much for your work on this. As I was looking through this, I so appreciate the time that you've put into all of this. Because I think for us as council, we wanted to look at this from the whole, so having it here with the proposed structure of our internal committees, but also with looking at our external committees or boards or whatever it is that we're sitting on. I think this gives us a better idea as to what we want to keep, maybe what needs to change a little bit. And so maybe what I will do is I will just turn this over to administration and you can kind of go through it for us if you'd like to do that.
Sure. I guess firstly, this goes back to a staff report we provided council back in July, which was really a bit of a door opening document to say, here's a rough look at what some of what we've got and some of what we can do. Council at that point provided input to administration on some of their thoughts and ideas. I have to give Carlene credit for a large amount of assistance putting the RFD together, and we really did sit as a team and walk through this and picked it apart and put it back together again. I'm certainly not going to suggest to you that this is what you're going to consider as a final, but it's certainly going to give you something significant, I think, to chew on. And we really rallied this around council's strategic goals and priorities and tried to determine what avenue of approach we could take with the structure of a committee to try and achieve those goals. And you're going to notice going through this, not all your goals are noted in here because some of them are very administrative in nature, very staff-oriented in nature, not requiring committees to be able to support those. So we don't hit on all the topics, but we hit on all the ones that we felt there was value in having committee structure surrounding it, including bringing the public into the picture of some of those ideas. So with that, we do know we have an organizational meeting coming up at our second meeting in October. I will caution council, council can create or remove committees at any point in time. I don't want you to think that the organizational meeting is a must-have drop-dead timeline for this. This is really the initial phase of this conversation. Once we can hone this down to determining which committees will suit council's desires the most, we then need to sit down and draft a committee's bylaw that's supported with a terms of reference structure for each of these committees, right? Which will also have to come back to council for approval before we can move forward and make appointments and advertise for public membership. So this is sort of phase one, and happy to walk you through it. And again, I do want to thank Carly for her support on this particular piece. So I think I'm going to start at the end, actually, with the committees of council that we've listed here. So we have a committee of whole in place already, and really that is all of council, and it's really taking place at the policy, bylaw policy and risk review committee, which we still have in formality. But we find it much more preferable to deal with all of council and reduce that duplication, have that conversation as a group. So council's avidly familiar with committee of the whole. You'll be using that as we move forward for next phase of budget deliberations as well. So I don't want you to get hung up on titles, but we're certainly happy to take any input you have into this.
The titles are wonderful.
Oh.
Let's leave them be. It's got me super excited, all these
Well, you're
great
two
titles.
very anal people that nonetheless, so again, we've tried to hit the targets as best we could, and we did take that feedback from, and I believe this was committee of the whole that it came to in July, if I recall correctly. So Community Enrichment Advisory Committee, and we're very careful about the terminology we used here. This is advisory, okay? So this would include members of council, and I believe we actually wanted public membership in this particular piece too, and I think we've missed a note on that particular one. This is to identify and recommend areas, types of installations to promote beautification and enhancement of public spaces, along with the expansion of public art, cultural and heritage recognition initiatives. This would involve reviewing review of proposed policies and obviously setting up a new structure. This committee would report to council. It would not be a management committee. It would make recommendations to council for budget, and council would give the authority as they desire to this particular group, right? Community Celebration Committee is what it says it is. This would be a community group, public acting as a facilitator of community event organizations, and this would act similarly, although not advisory. It would be more focused on acquiring, bringing proposals forward to council, acquiring budget from council, and literally carrying out the task. Okay, so that doesn't mean they would be doing it autonomously. There would be staff support depending on the event, and again, that structure that would be designed as part of the terms of reference for this particular group. As we know, we have several major events, Canada Day, Miners Days, and that group would have free range to promote and propose any number of other community celebrations, including potentially Family Day, New Year's, any Christmas festivities, garden judging, flower judging, whatever the case may be. This goes back to the list that Councillor Florence provided earlier this summer. Intergovernmental Relations Committee, I think I'll let Carleen maybe,
Sure.
explain this one a little bit for you.
Thank you, Steve, for your patience. The Intergovernmental Relations Committee is to bring together the intermunicipal committee that council had originally had and include a larger, more broad mandate that will allow council to use this committee more flexibly. So, for example, you may not be required to meet with a neighboring municipality all the time, but only when you need to, you can call on this committee to invite them into council order to discuss an issue. But you can also use the committee to come together and discuss strategy for relationship building with provincial and federal government, preparing for conferences and conventions, any type of intergovernmental topic. We can have a conversation a little bit more freely about advocating for the town of Coalhurst.
Great.
If at any point you have any questions, please feel free. So those three are new. Agenda setting committee is the mayor and deputy mayor. We're not proposing any changes to that except to the timing of the meetings, which I think we're getting worked out, I believe. CA review committee, that's all the council. Again, that's nothing new. You already have a structure in place for that. MSDA, 2 members of council, again, that's a legislative body. And I will suggest that we're not proposing any changes. I do want to just remind council, for those that may or may not know, you do need a municipal development authority. It doesn't necessarily need to be a committee. It could be a single individual, it can be a development officer, it can be a larger committee than this as well. So this particular group is made up of 3 individuals. I'm not proposing any changes to that at this particular time, but I do want you to know that there are options for a development authority. Okay. So a couple of ad hoc committees that we discussed, and this relates back to an earlier question of Mr. Lewis, Wetlands Advisory Committee. Ad hoc committees by design are set up with one focus, one function. Once that function is complete, then the committee is disbanded. Their job is done and off they go. So we know we've got a major project with many millions of dollars spent over on the wetlands, and we know there's an inherent desire through public surveys to provide some additional enhancement to that area over and above the paths and ponds. And we think, with council's consideration, that this is a good place to bring the public, some public members in to provide input along with a member or 2 of council, and again, that will be up to council. This group would be advisory and report to council with recommendations. This would also involve our recreation master plan. And potentially this group could have involvement in the development of that particular strategy as well, not only in its development and design, but in its carrying out and initiating. And this one, I will admit we struggled a little bit with this one. We tried to pigeonhole it in with some of the other groups that we had. And council's comments during our last session on this were to potentially look at a safe and healthy communities type of framework for one of our committees. But we saw a great deal of duplication in terms of the services that FCSS was providing and what those typical committees would provide. For instance, mental health and addiction issues are now mandated to FCSS by the provincial government, and that is a focus of a lot of our safe communities groups and other municipalities. So we didn't want to create any duplication. We were very conscious of not over-committing your committees. Right? So we couldn't find anywhere to literally jam this one in with something else that wouldn't have watered it down. And it is very ad hoc. You're not going to be doing a housing project every 2 or 3 years. This will be, specific to the next project, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be seniors housing, or a combination thereof. So that option is there. Again, this is an advisory committee to utilize professionals in the municipality or in the neighboring area in developing and promoting plans for seniors and affordable housing options and recommendations for council, and that would require obviously a great deal of public input as well. So, external committees. The Regional Emergency Management Group is one that's being worked on right now, so the bylaws are actually being put together as we speak by the Trace Consulting that has been engaged through our Regional Emergency Management Partnership. So you'll hear more about that moving forward, and they will, I'm completely assuming we'll be having membership from each of the partner municipalities, so that'll likely be one member of council. You already have Chinook Arts Library. You already have FCSS, South Grove, Mares and Reeves, Old Man Watershed, and I know some of these conversations revolve around the necessity or desire to remain or remain on some of these or spread your reach to other new groups. You have your Intermunicipal Subdivision Development Appeal Board, Community Futures, Green Acres, Highway 320, Coalhurst, and then our 2 Assessment Review Board groups which we're required to have. Additionally to that, and we had a long conversation about this one. So originally the premise was, and we know that it used to be an economic development group here, one of the challenges we have right now is, and I'm going to relate it very much like I would promoting a new convenience store, but you haven't got a lot of product on the shelf yet, if I might. So, and I say that lovingly. It's not that we can't have or won't have, but currently we don't have. So we felt probably the effort currently should be more in terms of trying to plan for that type of expansion opportunity in the municipality. And we've had some of these conversations already. So what we've proposed is really an internal committee. And this is almost really formalizing what we're doing already, essentially. And that would include our planner, engineers, operations director, myself, any other staff members that we feel would be relevant to the conversation, Mr. Passy, for instance, providing recommendations on commercial and industrial growth expansion opportunities, looking at SWOT analysis, commercial gaps along with supporting information. This also goes back to one of the early requests I had from council for looking for incentive opportunities for the attraction of business. This group would report to council as we have been, and again, this is really more of a formalizing of the current structure we have, but we thought it was important to note it because I believe at some point, once we can open up some opportunities, there would be real value in having community involvement in an economic development group of some kind. So that said, a couple of little minor notes at the bottom. What we've proposed would require the dissolution of the Recreation and Culture Committee, revised terms of reference, the former intermunicipal committee, economic growth to broaden to include public members and promotion of opportunities once commercial and industrial expansion options are realized, as I just explained. So that's kind of where we ended up. We didn't necessarily get there that way, however. We got there by looking at the pillars and the strategic goals so quickly, increasing community engagement, effective and informed governance, where the Wetlands Enhancement Advisory Group would come in and fill a gap in making informed decisions on good principles of governance. That's your Intergovernmental Relations Committee. Creating spaces for people to gather within the community. Again, Wetlands Advisory Group would fill that niche. I just group my pages up here. Right. Also the Community Enrichment Advisory Committee. That is relative to community beautification and enhancement of public spaces. Pillar C, land and environmental responsibility, developing infrastructure that meets community needs. Again, Community Enrichment Advisory. Goal 2, make the town an attractive place. Once again, the same committee, so you can see where we've tried to bundle these in the best fashion that we could. Update the entrance to the community by creating welcoming space. So while we don't look necessarily at the wetlands as an entrance, but it certainly is back entrance currently. So the Community Enrichment Advisory Committee and the Wetlands Enhancement Advisory Committee indeed cover a lot of those particular goals in Pillar B and C. Pillar D, deep cultural and social connections, maintaining a safe community. This falls back on our regional emergency management group, and as we know, and we haven't discussed in this document, post-public crime prevention session is that there's a lot of aptitude and desire right now in the municipality to create a ground up organization. And I use, for example, neighborhood watches, citizens on patrol, to promote safe community and to promote crime prevention and reduction strategies within the municipality. We haven't noted that because we believe that should be a citizen-driven organization, and it's not to say that council can't have involvement should they desire or should that group desire. And we're certainly prepared to assist as necessary to get them off the ground, help develop bylaws, for instance. Funding is something that we can have a conversation about another time if funding is required. We also think it's important that those types of groups do fundraising. It creates awareness of the organizations. It also creates immunity and cohesion amongst the group members, which I think is positive. Promote diverse and attainable housing. So there's your Community Housing Advisory Committee. I think I've covered about all of that off now, Tina.
That's excellent. Thank you. There's a lot of work that went into that. All right, so I'm going to open it up to council for any questions or comments, or even I know that in my conversations, if we have ideas of committees that maybe are missing that we'd like to see within there or anything like that. So open it up to council.
I do have a question and a comment if I could, please.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. So I see we've had a conversation on sort of as we're saying goodbye to some of these committees, but I don't recall us talking about sort of the policy and bylaw review committee. What would that look like what are we replacing them with, or how would that work without that?
Okay, if I might. So as I explained, I think off the beginning, that we would look to having the committee of the whole actually replace that committee.
That's okay, yeah.
So that we have all 5 councillors, not just 3 involved, and it reduces that duplication.
That's right, thank you. And one other, if I could, the Emergency Advisory Committee. I know that we have a regional management emergency committee, which I think is wonderful, but the Emergency Advisory Committee hasn't met, and so I guess we haven't had a chance to show teeth. But in terms of sort of community safety and community awareness, I don't know, can we reach those goals with a regional? Or what's our thoughts to replace that?
No, if I might, we just neglected to add that to the list. That committee is a requirement of the province, and that will remain in place as it is currently. P.S. for those members that are on that particular group, you'll get a meeting invite tomorrow. I met with former mayor, former councillor, lifetime elected official in the town of Coalhurst, Miss Coleman Green.
She's probably been calling you daily.
She's
What do we need?
just actually on her way to she's on her way away for a while, so we'll have a meeting set up for mid-October.
Wonderful, thank you.
Heather, go ahead.
I noticed the staff appreciation volunteer event, was committee's not on here. Where are we slotting that in, or is that?
We could maintain that if you like. I will say this, there might be a couple of other existing ones that we've missed in this list. We really concentrated on where to go, with ones to take away and ones to add. So I apologize if we missed that one. I missed that one because I was already organizing.
Well, I just make sure all council knows, I guess.
Yeah, no.
The changes you made and the ones that you've introduced look fantastic. Like, I'm sure we can slide things into them, but yeah, we do need to give appreciation.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm quite excited for the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. I think it's great that we're actually addressing advocacy and relationship building instead of just having meetings with neighboring communities. I think that if we look at some of the resolutions for FCM and Alberta municipalities, that'd be a great place to actually put our heads together and kind of get things going that way, because I'm sure we can make an impact if we go that way. Just a comment on some of the abbreviations here. I know this is a document for council, however, if somebody from the community is following along, BEWFCSS might not make any sense, or RCAAB, so if possible, can we use the full names and abbreviations just to help the public follow along?
I actually appreciate that comment. We actually did discuss this as we're going through. We kind of put this together quite late before the agenda. Actually, I think we finished this at about 4:20 on Friday. So yes, we'll expand those definitions, and I apologize for that because I had to look up BUFCSS myself, and Carleen wasn't sure what the assessment review board definitions were, so my apologies, and we'll expand those out for you.
Yeah. And then just a thought with the Chinook Municipal Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. I know that I currently sit on that one, however, I'm wondering if we should talk to Horsk and say we would not like to be a sitting member on the decisions made for appeals within the town, just to get away from that, the vision of the conflict of interest, right? We can still have somebody sitting on the appeal board for appeals outside of our region, but I think for our residents, just to create that hard line divide saying there's enough people out there that can do this, we don't need somebody from council sitting there, when they might be influenced by, say, the thoughts of land use bylaw change that's upcoming or something like that, right? There's always the perception.
I think if I might, through the mayor, I believe that they make a concerted effort to not have a local member sit on a local appeal, unless they really push to have somebody sit, but I can say we just had a recent appeal and absolutely there was no local member to that board.
That's because I said no.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, historically, that's exactly, it used to be how you're saying. So unless a change has occurred, or if they're just stuck, I'm not sure.
Because I've been asked to sit on 3 appeals. One was for Lethbridge County and then 2 were for Coalhurst. So I sat on the first Coalhurst one, but it was just kind of like, it's within the rules, but I don't know how the appealants felt in that situation, knowing that. And I kind of felt kind of weird sitting
I
there.
think the appellants were very happy. It was the MSDA board that wasn't. Just quietly saying, that's all. 'Cause-
So,
But I agree with what you're saying.
yeah, it's interesting, and if I might want to, you bring that up. It used to be that you could have a majority on your municipal planning commission, or in this case, the MSDA, or you could have a majority on your subdivision development appeal board, but you could not have a majority of councillors on both. It was one or the other, so there was always actually council members sitting on subdivision development appeal, but now that requirements have changed, and we've gone to a more regionalized approach, it is a good idea if we can to not have a local member. It does put them in a bit of a challenging position, but not that vastly different than sitting on an MSDA, for instance, really on development applications. But your point is well served, and I'll certainly look into that.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
I wanted to also add on that topic, that it doesn't have to be member of council either. Like, we can have as many public members as we want on this board.
Correct.
Just to add information on that, we currently have 3 members on the board, myself and 2 members of the public. So there have been people from the public that have been sitting in on these.
Great. So I have a few thoughts on this. As I was looking through, I just started kind of looking at other communities, and one of the things I noticed when I was looking at Coaldale is that they have a bylaw appeal committee. What do we do in terms of appeals for bylaw here, or are they not appealable?
We have a number of appeal functions throughout our bylaws that you don't have structure for.
Okay.
I would assume that the idea was they would be ad hoc at a time of need. I also see it in your animal control bylaws as well. So when it comes to, for instance, I believe vicious dogs, if I recall correctly. So there are a couple of places where that local appeal is required of council. I will say I've never used one in 25 years. I've never had council have to do that. So I believe at the time we would just need to appoint a couple of council members, but it might serve us to just note them in the listing.
Okay.
Although the chances of them being used are very slim.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Okay.
but we could. There may be some others in there too. As we go through the bylaws, we could find some of these. Hey, did you see this pieces?
But I guess you're right in the sense that, like, if we find those things, we can always build them out later on, right? Like, we don't need to have them right at this point in time.
And I guess you could appoint council members, but
Yeah.
they're so very infrequent. That,
Yeah.
We'll make sure we fill that list out as well, and we'll go through and, I also want to put a couple of notes there. So for your assessment appeal boards, while you have a member of council there, I have to stress that even if you're a member of council, you can't necessarily sit on these boards unless you've had certified training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. A couple of other questions that I had. So I don't know if this, I think I talked about this before, and I can't remember if we said maybe this would fit more under like a committee of the whole. But one of the things that I think is important is like council and public engagement, and ensuring that that's something that's continually happening, even in terms of creating like an annual cycle as to what that looks like. Whether it's making sure that we have those open houses like throughout the year or whatever that looks like. I just don't want that to get lost in something. If it makes sense to be something that we do in committee of the whole twice a year or something like that, that's fine too. But I think that was something that when we were doing our strategic plan, we really talked about. Not this idea about really looking at how do we do that and how do we do that better, I guess.
Well, if I might, I think the committee of the whole is the perfect place to have that conversation. And it may be more situationally oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, you do that public engagement for a specific purpose or purposes, depending on the circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
So we already know that we'll be doing some for budget coming forward, which I think is a big one and an important one. We also know that for the development of the recreation master plan, there will be a very actually innovative public consultation strategy attached to that particular piece. So yeah, I think as long as we're conscious of it going forward, going, hey, and sometimes honestly, sometimes the most effective ones are just a free community barbecue in the summertime when people can just come out and talk to their elected officials and discuss anything that they'd like to discuss, right? Give them free range kind of, so. I think community whole is perfect venue for that though.
Okay, yeah, so I guess I just wanted to be that like, that's just how we do business, right? We're looking for opportunities to provide people with opportunities to engage. And so like you're talking about like the barbecue and things like that, those things need to be, we just need to have that in our mind, right? As we're looking at the year and what we're doing, so.
Then we can be pre-scheduled too if you like.
Yeah.
If council wants to have that conversation, happy to support you in that.
We did have some conversation about creating, and I can't remember, was it quarterly, where we were going to say that this is that committee of the whole specific to that engagement. Because you're right, I mean, being reactive and saying, oh, this is coming, let's put it on the agenda. It looks very different than being intentional and deliberate, right?
I guess one of the challenges, don't you think, for instance, if you wanted to schedule just a council public open house 3 times a year, for instance.
Mhm.
Which is not a bad idea, by the way. The challenge comes in if you have another engagement strategy going around that same time, right? So they can get mixed together a little bit. We also have, by the way, we'll have an off-site levy open house coming up.
Mhm.
So there's a number of engagements that will come, and you do want to be a little cautious of having too much.
Mhm.
Because you can wear people out and they become a little disinterested, so. Certainly, I think something we can certainly have a conversation about, and I think over the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, we'll keep the public very busy.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then my last comment was, I know that we've had some discussion here about the Old Man Watershed Council. I don't actually remember who was part of that from, you're on that? And I think that there was some discussion about the benefit of have somebody being part of that organization, or maybe just being like a member that supports it. I don't know, maybe you can speak to that a little bit more since you are part of that.
Yeah, I guess what I've done with the Old Man Watershed Council is I've attended their AGM the last 2 years. They go over their annual report a little bit, and they have a couple presentations there, but I'm struggling with finding the merit of personally attending that meeting versus just reading through the annual report that they provide. The presentations are good, however, it's like they were talking about determining water quality by counting insects and bugs this year, right? So it's like, that's good information, but is that something that we can bring back to council into our town? It's tough to relay that way, right? Whereas if you're looking at their annual report, then you can have all the information for the projects they've completed throughout the year. One thing I did notice with the AGM was there was no real, these are our plans for next year, how do people feel about that? So it's just kind of like they're on their own trajectory, and it's more reactive than proactive when you're attending that meeting.
Did you, was there multiple meetings per year, or is it just the AGM?
Just the AGM, and it's about a 4 or 5 hour meeting.
Okay, and we do pay a fee to be members, I believe?
Our membership fee is not associated with having someone be part of it.
Oh, it's not,
And so,
okay.
and so I think that the idea of just saying we're members of that and we have the option to have someone be there is kind of what it's about, because I agree, they try to make their AGM be as interesting as possible for the people that are part of it. And these are all this is science, this is biology, and this is people highly operational, talking about their science projects that they're doing, right? And so if that's not your excitement, or you don't get excited by the thought of insect counts and those kinds of things, then that's, and so, but I think we have to be careful, because a lot of the work that they do is proactive. It's not reactive. They do make plans, and the work that they do is to avoid, but it's an avoidance kind of work, right? And so, but it's all science-based. And so many municipalities will have, a member of council be a part of it, but they make a determination and say, is this worth the budget to send someone? Or do we just say we're members in good standing and we pay our fee, right? I personally, I kind of enjoy going to those, because a lot of those guys are kind of my people. And I do have a degree in biology, so I love hearing about insects.
Well, when I look at their website, like are you part of their board? No, so you're just attending.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is a member municipality, right?
Yeah, okay. Excellent, thank you for that.
I don't know if I can add this, but just for context, the previous year, there was me and one other elected official there, and then this year I think there was me and maybe 3 or 4 elected officials there, so there's not too many elected officials that are attending in the region.
Yeah, I think typically the elected officials that attend are usually the ones that are actually sitting on the board. Those are the ones, and the other ones just go for interest's sake, right? For the most part, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. Looking at this, I myself am feeling really good about where we're at, and I would actually like to make a motion that council approve the 2024 committees of council restructuring plan and present the committee terms of reference for each committee at the October 17th, 2023 organizational meeting of council. With that, is there any discussion?
I love this, but we've just found like one that maybe might have been missing. And so I'm wondering if we could have sort of a friendly amendment that kind of allows for that, if there's anything else that we just kind of didn't pick up on.
What are you referring to? Are you the like
In terms of
emergency?
committees, yeah.
Well, I guess I took that as it just needed to be added to the list.
Well, and that's what I'm
Yes.
thinking, but if we actually make a motion to accept this specific restructuring plan with the list, is there anything else that might just kind of pop up later? I'm just saying if we have a little bit of a friendly amendment that allows for that to happen.
Absolutely, I think that's fine.
Sure. How would you propose wording that then?
The restructuring plan.
So really, we weren't talking about removing any of those existing internal committees, which emergency management is, we just forgot to list it simply, so.
Yeah, and so if we accept this restructuring plan, then, okay, so if we accept this restructuring plan, then we're not saying this in lieu of that. We're saying these additions that have been outlined, is that?
It doesn't say we're deleting those committees.
No.
Well, restructuring implies a change.
Yes.
Yeah, if I may, I can probably clear this up. Really, what this means is the committees that you see marked as new
Yeah.
would be added. And the bottom note, this is the real one I think that you're referencing, requires the dissolution of the Rec and Culture Committee and revised terms of reference for the former intermunicipal committee. That's really.
And those are the only
that's
two?
it.
Oh, okay, all right.
Now, I do want to maybe speak to that a little bit, because we'll do a TOR and Councilor Ackerman's putting up his hand too, so we can
You're next.
It's not that the Rec and Culture Committee doesn't have value, and I don't want anyone sitting on it to think that's not the case. We have a Parks and Rec Society, which manages admirably a lot of the recreational components in the municipality. And some cultural components too, I would suggest there's a bit of a crossover. In my time here, my affiliation with that particular group has been structured a lot around events and recreational pieces within the municipality, and some social pieces tossed in for flavor too, I would say. A bit of a clearinghouse of conversation at times. Very good people and all good contributors to the municipality.
And they're gonna have a wonderful role to play in Community Celebration Committee or Community Enrichment. They're gonna have a really wonderful role to play. I think it's a fantastic changeover and a great fit.
So what we would do is we would bring forward the policies or the bylaws that created that particular group. We would have it rescinded along with the policy review committee, policy bylaw and risk review committee. So those two would go and the rest would add, and that would really be the only change. It would just fix the list up.
Thank you for clarifying that, thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you. I was just going to mention the policy bylaw committee was one that we'd have to rescind there. And then just for clarification with this, are we looking at making like a committee policy that lists all the committees? Because I know currently there's one that kind of has a list of the terms of reference for the different committees all in one policy. Is that something that we're going to maintain going forward so we have a master list?
So what we're proposing is we develop actually a committee's bylaw, which would contain the terms of reference for those committees.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So what you were gonna say.
And updates to the procedure bylaw.
And update to the procedure bylaw, which Ms. Betteridge is actually working on as we speak.
Awesome.
Great.
You're gonna be my hero. Is that gonna be in a Coalhurst thing that we just?
That was not that large, actually.
All right, so looking at the motion as it stood, was there anything that you thought that needed to change based off that information?
No, with that information, I'm happy with how it is, thank you.
Excellent. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you for your work on that. I know that this has been something that you've been working on for a couple of months. I'm excited by the new structure and all the work that we'll be getting done with that.
Much work left to do now.
Yeah, but we've got a clear path forward.
There you go.
All right, so now we're just going to go into our council reports. I'll start out with mine here. I just wanted to extend a thank you to all the community members who came out to the Community Crime Prevention Information Session. It was great to see the number of people that did come out, and I know I have seen some discussion from community members about looking at putting that formalized group together to look more at what that looks like. So happy to see that happening, and to also have the RCMP there to address some people's concerns, as well as even our CPO being there to talk more about what his role is and how he can help support community safety. Some of the meetings that I've attended, they're pretty standard outside of the Chinook Arch executive meeting. That was one that just kind of came up. And then I do have some upcoming meetings. So one thing for council to note is that I've actually set a recurring meeting up with CAO that will be happening every Thursday, just so that we can I can keep in the loop with that. And so I'm looking forward to that. I am attending the EOEP effective meetings session that will be happening right before the convention. And again, look forward to that as well. One thing that I was thinking about that I'd actually like to make a motion for is that I'd like to make a motion that we receive, and I guess I could even submit this, you can tell me the best way to do this actually. I'd like to get more information on the neighborhood play program and the effectiveness of it from this year. And so I don't know if that should be a motion or if I should do that as an administrative inquiry.
Inquiry.
An inquiry? Okay, I will do that, then I'll submit that so we can have that for whenever you get that. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes.
Just curious, what is Chinook Arch up to?
Chinook Arch is, we just went over the budget and talked a little bit more about inflation and personnel. So looking at that, one of the things that's happening there is that they've actually had a little bit of a change in staffing. So they're hiring for a new position. That person did a lot of like fundraising and community stuff. And so looking at that in that realm. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Is there any other questions? If there's none, I will go to Deputy Reporter.
Thank you, seems I always forget the community events on my meetings. Because I did attend the Community Crime Prevention Information Session. And I'd like to thank our Peace Officer John and our CMP officers, David and Carolyn, for coming at us for our community, helping it safer, and of course our administration from Sean and Caroline for organizing everything and bringing the information together. As for me, I attended a couple ORSC meetings actually no, I did put it on here, never mind, what am I thinking? There it is, I did it. I'm doubting myself before I even make it there. September, and then I had a couple ORSC meetings this last 2 weeks, and the agenda's upcoming meetings, Rec and Culture on the 21st, and the 20th, Upper Municipalities. Yeah. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Thank you. How's horse doing?
It is not a good.
You're getting questions.
I feel it's important to bring some of these external committees and the information that we're getting from them to the public, so that's why I'm asking about these ones.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you.
For sure.
Thanks for the question. I would love to tell you all about ours. At the directors meeting, we had 2 presentations. One of them was from ORSC, which was about the community housing needs assessment studies, which I brought forward to council today. The other one was about attracting industrial land development. for the region, which was put on by Peter Casserell from South Crow, and I shared that information with council, the presentation, and it was actually a very interesting presentation about how they are looking, of course, to bring industry to the region, and they look at certain key factors in when they do that. And proximity to rail is actually one of the big ones, and like a spur line is actually more beneficial, for example, right? The problem is that there's not a lot of spur lines in existence anymore, and it's very expensive to build a spur line. But yeah, because we're landlocked, rail is an important factor in these industrial processes in selling their products, whether they're raw or processed in terms of some kind of value-added production service, like the pea protein plant that they use as an example, which is the old Wildcraft Brewery. No, that's not the name.
PIP International.
Yeah, PIP International, yeah. That building there. So one of the things they're looking at was brownfield sites where they had old plants that they could just kind of inhabit and use rather than upfronting all the capital to build a new facility, which of course is not, there's not a lot of those buildings in the area, especially not around Coalhurst either. And the kind of the main message on that presentation was, if you build it, they will come, because there's a demand for that type of land in the area right now, which I think is interesting, especially when you look at how the north of Lethbridge is developing, and even outside of Lethbridge in the county, just outside it, they're doing their own kind of development out there as well. So Coalhurst, we haven't really seen much industrial development. I know it's something that we're looking at, but it's just a good reminder that we should get moving on it soon. And one of the issues that was presented to municipalities was actually moving at the speed of business. Was one of the issues they said, that, you know, if we need to make a decision, it's in the council, it's about business needs to be, they're making decisions much faster than that. You know, they have quarterly reports and people are shareholders and everything else. So it's important for us to be ready, I guess, to act. Is the message there, right? We can't be reactive. We'll be too slow, I guess, in terms of the business speed of things for the most part, because we have a different community we're serving the residents of Coalhurst, right? So so it's about preparation, meeting opportunity, and then get our lucky break, right? So, but I did talk to the Construction Association recently about industrial construction in the region, and it's booming right now in terms of agri-food kind of work there, and the boom is, you know, probably going to last a couple of years here, maybe more, who knows, but it's going well. And then the Coalhurst executive meeting that we had was really, we had a preliminary look at the budget as well. We are, again, I think this is not news, but there's not a lot of subdivision activity in the region. We're way below what we were expecting. Maybe half what we were expecting, I guess. And a lot of those fees that Orsk gets is based on subdivision application fees and processing fees and stuff like that. So the numbers on that are low, and this is nothing new because it kind of ebbs and flows with the market. So there's no, I guess, alarm yet. It's just something that we have to keep our eye on. Hopefully, you know, we can recover that next year or the year after. You know, there's no dire need right now for Orsk. One of the other complicating factors we realized, though, when we're looking at those numbers, was the fee for service which Orsk receives. This is for like redoing land use bylaws, intermunicipal development plans, those types of things, where they're not included in our services already. Those types of things are way low as well in terms of what they had budgeted for, what they normally see. So, I mean, you can't just ask people to redo their land use bylaws, but there's certainly, you know, a lot of municipalities, smaller than us even, who, you know, just get by with an amendment here and an amendment there, have redone land filers or MVP or any of those kind of high-level documents, since the 80s or something like that, right? So, but yeah, it's hard to convince them to spend that money to redo it when they don't have a budget. They just have one staff member, right? So, because a lot of them have been already updated in the region, they did a lot of work with that. So, we had a chat about staffing there too, like if that represents another, should they go down to one less planner, for example. But the way it works right now is they've allocated certain communities for each planner right now, so it's not like one person takes on all that fee for service. It's distributed amongst all the planners, right? So if we did have to look at restructuring in the future, it would be a bit of a big shakeup because you'd be shifting planners around, all the planners around potentially. Was that a good answer?
Yes, that's what.
Thank you. That's excellent, thank you. All right,
Mayor Martina, if I might,
yes.
based on that conversation, and I know I spoke with Lenz about opportunities at Coalhurst, and
Yes.
there's a critical need for development officers, not only in this area, but everywhere in the province. And small municipalities are challenged to find them and keep them. And so we did have some discussion about them potentially bringing on a number of development officers that they could use as contract service providers to small municipalities, which I think is a great idea.
I did reiterate that to them at the executive meeting as well, and he suggested that it would probably be, depending on the size of municipality, but you're probably looking at one development officer for about 5 municipalities, so they'd have to get about 5 on board. And one of them would have to be a bigger one like Coalhurst, so I said to talk to you about it, that it would probably be something that's up our alley, so. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. We'll move to Councillor Caldwell.
Thank you. I am first wanting to recognize the RCMP for a great presentation and information that they gave at the recent Community Crime Prevention information session. And I also want to thank them for their increased presence and their traffic management that they're doing as our children returning to school. I live right along that area, so I see them out and about a lot. So I'm really appreciative of that. I was hoping that came from that. I was hoping that we might be able to sort of grab some of that and continue to move it forward in our community. When we were hearing what people were saying, some of their biggest concerns, they did give some good answers. And I think, if we're looking at maybe getting into our newsletter and maybe on Facebook, some information about the app. And sort of so that people can triage, right? They can use that app to report something that happened yesterday or whatever. They can call the complaint line if it's not imminent risk, but they need to have a response. And then 911, of course, when it's imminent need and fast response. But I'm hoping that might, if we can really convince our residents just to get on there and start doing that, it can help, right? Sort of remove some of that wait time. And some information on the SCAN project and how residents can reach out. I know it's on our website, but our website is good if people go there looking. And I mean, if we can maybe get it into the community a little more, like information on how to reach out to the SCAN project, right? And why it's important, and so that they can feel like they're actively involved. Just a couple of pieces that they were talking about. I was thinking that might be able to help us. People feel like they're a little bit in charge of fixing some of their concerns, right? And so that's really all I want to say about that. Meetings and events that I've attended, back into the fall swing with Green Acres Foundation, their executive meeting. We were setting some of our annual priorities, and I'll get a jump on that if you want, Councillor Akron. Thank you for inspiring more conversation about these. So we do have some wonderful strategic plans. We do our visioning, and we have these big goals. And what we determined is that we should probably sort of break down annually what is the number one things that we're going to be working on over the next year as a board. we sort of identified strategies that would bring Green Acres as the top of mind in seniors housing in our communities. Investigate potential partnerships, a succession plan for our senior management team. That's going to be a big one. That's going to be a frightening one, but we've got an amazing senior management team, and currently they promise that they're not going to retire together and go off adventuring. They're going to stagger their retirements. I put a lot of focus into the next generation, so adopting to new trends and having sort of a lot younger people take part in the conversations and the understanding of how technology can, support our, the residents living in our housing. Like COVID was a big one. We had a number of iPads that came in, and that made a huge difference for a lot of our residents. They could FaceTime with their families, and really showed us that moving forward technology is pretty critical. And then we also really need to work on rebuilding Miami and Picture Butte. That's been a goal. We've been advocating strongly with the provincial government for that for a period of time. But if people are using, if someone is required any kind of mobility aid like a walker, they can't go into their own bathrooms. They have to back in and leave the mobility aid out in the main body of the room, and then just kind of shuffle in, holding on to whatever they can to use the washroom. And so we continue to provide tours and continue to advocate with different MPs to move forward with that. Was there any other questions about Green Acres?
No, if I might, the province just announced a big pot of money to refurbish existing housing.
Yes, yeah, and so we're hoping. Part of the challenge is the province kind of owns some of their buildings. So the province owns Miami. And so, during the glory years, they built all these facilities in all of our municipalities. And then over the past number of years, they cost a lot of money to maintain these properties. It costs a lot of money to say that we're in the business of providing seniors housing and seniors care. And so they've been kind of moving away from that. And so a lot of these are sort of falling into, I hate to use the term disrepair, but they're aging out. And so they need some investment into that, and that's where that's coming from, right? And so hopefully they'll be able to do that with Miami. And so, my upcoming meetings and events, recreation and culture, and then the Green Acres Board meeting, as well as our Alberta Municipalities Conference from the 27th through the 29th. And that's it, thank you. Does anybody have any more questions?
Yep.
Well, nobody asked any questions, I guess I preempted them.
All right, and then we do have Councillor Florence's report there, and then we'll move to Councillor Ackerman's.
Okay, thank you. Just kind of wanted to echo the sentiments about everyone that helped make the community crime prevention information a success, from the residents that showed up to our CMP and the town staff that put that on. I thought that was absolutely great. I'd also like to recognize the staff that have helped make back to school as easy as can be, very welcoming for those who may be attending for the first time. My little guy's just in preschool, and it's been fantastic with the staff and everything.
Is he in preschool? Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful.
So I think they're doing a fantastic job there. Meetings attended, we had the community crime prevention information session. I put some of the links that they'd shared from the presentation in here for if anyone's following at home and they want to kind of find some more information. And then there's a great chance to hear some questions and answers from the community. One thing that I did attend that I don't have on the list was actually from this morning. South Grove has a scholarship program, and we had the selection committee meeting this morning, so we spent an hour and a half sorting through a number of applicants from 3 schools in the region for agri-food scholarships. So then we're gonna bring that to the executive for final decision, which leads into upcoming meetings. We got the quarterly meeting on 21st in Picture Butte, the executive meeting, because a lot of people are gonna be traveling next week. We're actually probably gonna piggyback that on the quarterly meeting on Thursday. And then we also have the Alberta Municipalities Conference next week. And then during the conference, South Grove has a meeting with Minister Ellis, who is the Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister. So I will be attending that along with Mayor Willett from Coots, just to kind of add a couple extra bodies from South Grove to go to that. So that should be a little bit interesting. That'll be at the legislature.
Is there any questions? One of you guys better grill them.
You know, that's the thing though with Councillor Ackman, he provides a lot of really great, lots of in-depth information already. So thank you for that.
That's excellent, thank you. Can I get a motion to receive?
Sure, I'll move to receive the councillor reports.
Excellent. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. So now we'll move on to correspondence. The first item that we have here is the Coalhurst Parks and Recreation Society financial report. So this was included in your package, and this, I do believe was, regarding the party in the park and Miners Days, and the movie in the park. So along with this, you'll just kind of see the budget breakdown. And so, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add from this, or if this was more just for information for us.
Thanks, Mayor Martina. This is my first year thrust into into Miners Days. And I know it's been done in a number of different ways. And I simply asked the Parks and Rec group for a proposed budget for their event and what they'd be looking for from the municipality, and suggested that at the end I would just like a brief breakdown of what those expenditures were, so that we knew going into next year about what had been done the previous year. And Stephanie's done a really nice job of putting that down in very broad terms for us. I believe we contributed just over $7,500 to both the show and shine, the party in the park, and we'll be in the park. And I know that we had a lot of residents and visitors that enjoyed all three of those particular events. So success all around. So this is really just for council's information, and again, gives us a leg up on next year and helps us with planning and budgeting for Miners Days 2024.
Great. Are there any questions on this? Go ahead.
Just a comment, if I may. I think that having this feedback is fantastic. Just kind of add that transparency for where town funds are going. So I really appreciate the effort that they took to share that with us.
Great. Can we just get a motion to receive the report for the correspondence?
Think that
You'll make it? Okay. And is there any discussion?
I just wanted to call to the attention that under the Coalhurst cruisers, they're planning to allocate.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Oh, sorry.
We'll be there in a minute.
Sorry.
We're gonna go through these.
Are we going to do each one at a time and move to accept them one at a time, or we're just having a motion in total so that we can discuss them? Is that?
I wanted to go through them individually because with one of them, I wanted to pull out a piece.
Thank you.
If that's all right with you?
For sure.
Thank you for clarifying. I
No
have
problem.
no comments.
You're okay with this one then?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll call the question, all in favor? That's carried. We'll look at the Coalhurst cruisers now, so feel free to go for it.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Martina. I just found it interesting that we contributing $500 to this event, and then the society has planned to donate their proceeds or something, in the amount of $500 to Friends of CS and Coalhurst 55 Plus community. So it seemed a bit odd to me that they would accept town funding and then again take it towards and give it almost the extra money towards another society, which yeah.
So yeah, would you both like to be able to speak to that?
Yeah, probably. So how this really works was this, like Stephanie had a couple of meetings and she brought forward a proposed budget for Miners Days for the party in the park and movie in the park. And it had included a $500 figure for the car show. Which which I was fine with, but I didn't have a budget breakdown at the time of the car show expenses, but I knew they were buying plaques and I think they were doing t-shirts and a few other things, so I wasn't too concerned. She had also suggested that she had, you know, probably budgeted high on a couple of the Party in the Park events, or actually I believe it was a movie in the park. So being of Scottish descent, I actually reduced the offering from the municipality for that particular event down to what she had proposed. Actually left in, I think, let me put it this way, I believe originally the request was around 2,000 Party in the Park. Thought that was perhaps high, and they might be able to do it for 1,000, and I said, how about if we put it at 1,300, and then you got some flexibility. And then on further discussion in a subsequent meeting, the request was increased for the cruiser's car show. And I suggested at that point that if they were going to be giving money to other organizations, that they might want to use the extra 300 in the movie in the park if that's how they wanted to allocate their funds. But the budget number was what the budget number was, which I think was about 75-40, something like that. So they did that knowingly and willingly, and actually went over budget on the movie in the park and the Party in the Park, which the Park and Rec Society absorbed. So that was their choice on how they allocated those funds, and then they were aware that the cruisers would be making a contribution to a local organization. I really left that decision up to them internally if they wanted to absorb the loss to allow the cruisers to do that, or to just to support the cruisers in the amount that was required to pull off the event. So that was more of an internal decision made by them. From my perspective, the funding that we invested in the Parks and Rec Society in those 3 events, I think was well invested and served the municipality well. And Miners Days will make for a really good event. So I was quite happy with it. In terms of our total event budget, I think it's Mr. Passy pointed out earlier, I believe we're probably just over half of our budget for 2023, doing quite well. And next year we'll expand those events, so I wouldn't look for a budget reduction for them, but just understanding that we had a late start this year and had probably not the range of events that we hope to have in 2024. So I think all around everyone did a very good job. The parade was well attended. We're still waiting to put some numbers together for that, and the pancake breakfast yet, we're still waiting on building on that as well. But I would suggest we did extremely well with being very budget conscious, and as far as the question from the deputy mayor, that really was an internal choice they made on how they allocated those funds, so I really didn't have too much of an issue with it.
I wonder too, because I see like in her initial preamble for this, it says the estimated budget for this year's event was $800, and there's a 40% increase in vehicles, and because they pay a registration, I think that that's where, like when I'm looking at this, that's where the additional revenue came from. And then, yeah, I think that you're correct in saying that they decided what to do with that money at that point in time.
Suspiciously adds up to the same amount, that's all.
Actually, some cars is really quite good. Like that's really a very good turnout, so we're super happy. Yeah.
Great. Would anybody like to make a motion to receive for information?
Sure, I can do that.
Great, thank you.
I move that the council receive for information the correspondence in item 13.2, Coalhurst Cruisers Financial Report as presented.
And any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. The next one that we have here is the Southborough report that's usually presented at Mayors and Reeves. I do believe that Councillor Ackerman, you had requested this be included. Was it you? Yes, okay. And so would somebody like to make a motion to receive this for information? Go ahead.
Sure. I move to receive for information correspondence item 13.3 Southborough Mayors and Reeves report as presented. And if I just may comment on that, my thoughts here are just add transparency and share this with the public so that they're aware of what some of these external committees are doing. So If anyone's reading it, the latest highlights are in yellow, and it's just kind of, there's the different topics, and then as things progress, there's just a new highlighted section for every update for each one.
Excellent, thank you. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. The next one is from FCSS. So at the last board meeting, there was a request from the Village of Sterling to submit an Alberta Community Partnership intermunicipal collaboration application to do community needs assessments. And so with this, they're looking for a motion from the councils that are involved to show that we support this happening. And so I think that this is a really great thing. And first of all, I would like to move that the council approve the participating with the Village of Sterling in applying for the Alberta Community Partnership Intermunicipal Collaboration Funding Grant to find the Barron Eureka Warner FCSS community needs to fund, I think that should say to fund the Barron Eureka FCSS.
Yeah, last line.
Yeah, the last line there.
This one? Oh.
Yeah, this line. Needs assessment project. Is there any discussion on that? If there's none, I'll call question. All in favor? That's carried. And then I guess, do we still need a motion to accept it for correspondence, or is that good with that? Excellent, thank you. Okay, so that is our correspondence. We're now going to go into closed session. So can I get a motion to do that at 7:56 p.m.? Okay.
I move we enter closed session at 7:56 p.m.
Any discussion? Call question? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, can we get a motion to go back into open session?
Sure, I move that we return to open session at 9:21 PM.
Excellent. Any discussion? Call question, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. And then can we get a motion for, privacy piece?
I'll make that motion.
Sure.
If I could. I move that the discussion of documents of items 15.1, 15.2, and 15.3 remain confidential pursuant to sections 25, 24, and 21 of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act.
Excellent. Any discussion? Call question, all in favor? That's carried. And then finally, can we get a motion to adjourn, please?
I move that we adjourn at 9:21 PM.
Any discussion? Question? All in favor? That's carried.
I was excited.
I was like, what